It is my honor to be joined by Reverend Jesse Jackson, who is the founder and president of the Rainbow Push Coalition. I'm joined by Reverend today for an exclusive one-on-one conversation about the life and legacy of John Lewis. It's so important for me to sit down with you, Reverend, because you witnessed Congressman Lewis firsthand, his evolution from the boy from Troy who used to preach to chickens to a public servant as soon as he walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And so I really want to talk to you about that. First of all, because you're one of my heroes. I grew up with a Reverend Jesse Jackson picture on my mantle because, as you know, my dad, Eddie Rye, worked on campaigns in '84 and '88. So you are a legend to me. So I'm so grateful to be with you today.
Thank you.
So can you talk to us first about your friend, John Lewis? And
first, let me say, I'm sad. We met in the spring and summer of 1960. And he left in the spring and summer of 60 years of being together. That's a long time.
Yeah.
I met his wife, Lillian, before he met Lillian. They got married. We became friends, Jack and Lillian and John. So we've been together for a long time. I think what's missing about the analysis of John had the courage of the convictions and all of that. But it's important to put what he did in the context. You don't separate Mandela and Tambo from ANC.
Yeah.
You don't separate John from the legal foundation. From 1911 to 1954, we faced 4,000 lynchings. A handful of Black lawyers had to go into small towns and not so small towns, and under great danger, great duress. So let's get the legal foundation straight. I think that those legal heroes, Howard, not Harvard, must be put in place. But even when the law changed, the culture didn't change. It took 9 years of bus rides and fire buses and sit-ins and marches, demonstrations. John emerged heading SNCC.
Yeah.
But SNCC joined the mainstream of the SNCC did not do a generational thing like we young, y'all old. SNCC joined the movement, the legal foundation movement. And so by 60.
Can I ask you about that really quick? So I hear you saying that John Lewis joined the movement that was already existing. He did not make it a generational divide conversation. Were you there when Dr. King got the letter from John Lewis asking to be a part of the movement?
The day Dr. King and John Lewis spoke in Washington, from Florida to Texas, we couldn't use a single public toilet. My high school senior class couldn't take pictures along State Capitol. We couldn't advise with Howard Johnson, we couldn't say at Holiday Inn. Black and brown soldiers so sat behind Nazi field up American military bases that day. So we had to break that barrier. So we got that was a huge breakthrough for public dignity in '64. Then there's a big conference at the Democratic Convention in '64, where Franklin Hammer and the Mississippi Freedom Democrat Party, they don't want liberty, they want liberation. A lot of tension around that convention. Then in '65, Mr. Megan Boynton came and asked Dr. King to come to head the Dallas County Bulls League, and he came, and blah, blah, rest history. John was representing SNCC that day on the march, and Jose was representing SCLC. The beating he took to immortalize him because it was such a fundamental thing.
Did you ever have a moment, because so often we think of nonviolence as without conflict. Do you have a moment where you were at conflict with Mr. Lewis in the movement, whether it was disagreement on strategy or something else? I know SNCC and SCLC certainly didn't always see eye to eye. Is there a notable moment where you all were at conflict, and how did you resolve that?
Well, nonviolence is a way of life as well as a strategy. You can't take on the Confederacy with weapons you have none. You can't reload. That's and lose the power. And when SNCC dumped John Lewis and went public with their violence, they lost. They had no foundation of Black community, Black labor, progressive supporters. They went out of business. John remained connected to the main thing. And then that's why he had to navigate his way through. But John emerged out of that, really the valedictorian of our class.
Valedictorian of your class. What do you say to young people who saw John Lewis, as you talked about, become the youngest speaker at the March on Washington, who are encouraged by his visibility, but also at the more radical side of his strategy? What do you say to young folks who are in the streets right now, Reverend? This is a time of tremendous change. I know in my lifetime, I didn't expect for people to agree with the affirmation that Black Lives Matter, but we're here now with, I think, the highest approval rating ever with 67% of Black Lives Matter. What do you say?
Nonviolence is radical. When you go nonviolent and massive with discipline and coalition, and even if we go violent, they have AK-47. They manufacture. Nonviolence confuses them. So a combination of nonviolent direct action that's massive in discipline and voting and coalition, that's a winner. That's why through all of the Trump stuff, 60 blacks in the Congress, and they got voted in. 40 Latinos in the Congress, 2 Native Americans in the Congress. The power of that vote. And now the power of coalition vote. Many whites used to march for freedom but not for equality.
What is one of the greatest lessons you learned from John Lewis, the activist, and the John Lewis, the legislator? Or one lesson that you think we should all learn from him?
Find out what you do to outlast where purpose is bigger than person. For example, this generation, purpose is bigger than person. If today, if Black Lives Matter fight for the constitutional right to vote, they will only have the state's right to vote. November 3rd, you have 50 different elections, separate and unequal. We should have the constitutional right, we have the constitutional right to bear arms, speak, but not to vote. That's the big issue. Kentucky today, for example, where you got Ron Paul holding up, making lynching a federal crime. You have Mr. McConnell pulling up voting and food for the hungry.
Reverend, you said that Black Lives Matter should put efforts in the constitutional right to vote, but you also just brought up Kentucky. And we know that Breonna Taylor was shot and killed in her home where she slept in Kentucky. Shouldn't some of their efforts just be about that kind of justice and equality where law enforcement is held to account for taking someone's life just like we are?
Well, put it this way, Angela. Police patrol, politics control. So if we, in fact, patrol the police forces, then those who shot her must, in fact, be arrested. They have not been arrested. I went to Minnesota, and the guy who killed George Floyd, met with the prosecutor. He said, we can't lock him up. Keith Ellison got the case. He locked up the next day, all 4 of them. The vote and coalition vote after Minnesota about 3% black. Same is true with Paul Howard in Atlanta. He killed a guy in the back. Police revolt, but he is now facing murder as an indictment. That's the power of that vote.
Yeah.
So I would say to young people who are marching, they keep marching. March for that. For example, what does Wall Street mean to what does Black Lives Matter mean to Wall Street to access to capital? What does it mean to auto industry? What does it mean to NASCAR? What does it mean to all the motor picture? What does it mean to Silicon Valley? Let's apply the principle of the principles of Black Lives Matter across, but don't limit with police. Mandela didn't go to jail 27 years for better police. At the end of the apartheid system, you can hire and fire police and alter their behavior.
Yeah.
And to me, the beauty of Ellison in Minnesota, the guy who killed George Floyd, $1 million bond. You know, who killed a brother in Atlanta, and died in 3 days. That's so. You think about Black Lives Matter, where they come from. Remember when Trayvon Martin was killed, and Diallo was killed in New York, and all that, and the killers walk away free. So I say, with Michael Brown on the ground, and first, don't Black Lives matter?
Reverend, as long as I have known you and followed your work, you've talked about the constitutional right to vote, which we don't have with the same protections that you mentioned around bearing arms and free speech. For as long as I've known the work of John Lewis, he's fought for voting rights. What do you think is the next frontier, in addition to the constitutional right to vote?
You see, John fought for the protected voting rights, which means that with Section 5 on it,
Yeah.
you could not move a district without checking to the Attorney General. In Robertsford, in 2013, Shelby, they took that away. They weakened the Voting Rights Act by 65. It was weak compared to the constitutional right to vote. We knew when in the year 2000, Bush was hit by 530 votes. They stopped the count. 27,000 blacks in Nevada County had not been counted. It was a state election. The governor was Bush's brother. Ms. Harris was Secretary of State, used the name of prisoners to confuse it. So states control. Hillary beat Trump by 3 million votes. He's the president. Somebody that don't smell good to me.
It's the Electoral College.
Well, ain't no Class A and Class B stock in voting. Vote, one person, one vote.
Yeah. So you want to get rid of the Electoral College, Reverend?
Absolutely.
That's a way to honor you and Mr. Lewis, right?
Well, the fact that we're one person, one vote.
Yeah.
There was some notion back in the day that if the common people voted, they make a mistake. You have a backdrop, which is kind of college, the majority of people's vote.
Yeah.
Well, we're more mature than that now. We have more access to media now, so we don't need no backup to democracy, no oversight over the vote. We need the vote to count, not oversight. The vote must count.
Yeah. So you and Mr. Lewis have a similar path in that he went from activism, and I'm not saying he ever got rid of activism or ever stopped being an activist, but went from activism to public service through elected office. And you certainly went from activism to broadening out with the Rainbow Push Coalition into running for office yourself. What do you say to people who see the pathway to public service as a form of moderating? Because you have to compromise so much once you're elected. What do you say to folks about whether or not I know that you said nonviolence is radical, but folks who would say that as you have to shift to become more publicly acceptable and receive, that you have to moderate?
When you're in Congress, you trade with power, you win. You had 3 or 4 blacks in the Congress. What could they trade? 60 blacks in the Congress, 1 Latinos, 2 Native Americans. For power, so we can trade and win at the same time. I chose another route, the third rail. If you look at the train tracks in Chicago, New York, the tracks, track A and track B. The electrical gadget is the third rail, that's where the power is. I opened up the system. I ran 84, we had 3 million new voters and 484 delegates. That didn't come off right. Because if I got 49%, Money got 50%, he got all 100 delegates. We challenged that. So by 88, we had proportionality as opposed to one person, one vote. Proportionality. We got 1,200 delegates with $19 million, I might add. And in 08, when President Barack ran, following the 84 rules, Hillary would have been the one. She won California, Texas, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and New Jersey, New York. Following the 88 rules, Barack hung in there. So the rules matter.
Yeah.
The reason why we do so well on the basketball court, playing for the rules, public goals, the referees fair, and scores transparent. And when the rules are fair, we can make it.
I love that. And that's all you all have been fighting for. Reverend, I don't have another question, but I do want to offer you up any parting words, anything that you want us to take from the life and legacy of your friend, John Lewis, the activist, the legislator, the public servant, and the voting rights fighter.
You've been almost focused on, for example, today, it's not enough to vote for Biden as other than Trump. That's a good thing, but we health disparities, the plan, even access to health care. 60 million have no health insurance. There's a comprehensive health plan. Education disparities, job disparities. We must, if we take over the House, Senate, and the Parliament, we must address those disparities. We can't be a milder version of the right wing. We must be demanding. Even the plan for access to capital, industry, technology, health education, and healthcare. That's the mission of this generation. And clearly we're forcing the world. When you see people marching, taking down statues in London and France, we're the light on the hill. We move, the whole world moves. I'm glad about that.
Yes, Reverend. Well, we stand on your shoulders, and I'm so grateful for all of the opportunities I've had to learn from you and the many more. You know that you can always pull my coat if I'm not getting it right, and I intend to make you proud. So thank you.
I stand on your daddy's shoulders.
Yeah, and my daddy's too.
Publisher, writer, thinker, freedom fighter. God bless you, Angela.
Thank you. God bless you, Reverend.
Give Maxine Walls my regards. I love her so much.
I will tell her. She knows.
She's so special.
She is. Thank you, Reverend. We love you.